Hello, this is Dr. Marge again, and we continue with our Class 2 Amalgam Restoration. Next is removing infected Caries dentine, which extends beyond the ideal pulpal wall level. So, first, when we're doing conventional cavity design, we start with outline resistance retention convenience. And then if while doing those procedures, somehow caries has been removed, but not intentionally removed, no. And if there is still caries remaining after you have established the ideal pulpal floor depth, then we go to the removal of remaining infected dentine. Okay. So for example, here, you have established already the ideal pulpal floor depth, but there is still caries. So, incorrect lowering of pulpal wall, hindi mo ibababa yung buo. Okay. You should still have your lingual seat, and you just remove infected dentine. Infected caries dentine on eggshell wall. How about on eggshell wall? You have established already the correct gingival, mesiodistal width of the gingival floor, but you still have caries on the eggshell wall, then you have to excavate. So this is how your preparation would look like on the eggshell wall. Then you have to bevel or round off the ixtropulpaline angle using the gingival margin trimmer. Beveling or rounding off the ixtropulpaline angle is resistance form. Why? Because it prevents fracture to the restoration. It increases the bulk of the restorative material on the area to decrease the stress concentration within the restorative material to prevent fracture. Okay? Anything that prevents fracture of both the restoration or the tooth is resistance form. Next, you bevel the enamel portion of the gingival wall with your gingival margin trimmer to ensure full-length enamel rods forming the gingival margin. So, a while ago, you bevel the ixtropulpaline angle, which is resistance form. Now you bevel the gingival cavosurface margin approximately 20 degrees. And what step is this? This is already finishing enamel margins and walls. Again, finishing enamel margins and walls. Then all sharp angles at the linguogingival and faciogingival corners. Linguogingival and faciogingival line angles are rounded by rotational sweep with gingival margin trimmer. Remember, any sharp line angles in your preparation is a stress-bearing area, and we don't want that. Position of fissure burr to prepare the retention lock. Burr is moved lingually and pulpally. Lingual lock, there is dentine support of the proximal enamel. And look at the completed locks on the tooth. These locks are part of your retention form. Number 1/4 burr may be used to cut the proximal lock. 1/4 burr is the size of your round burr. It's the smallest round burr. Then you remove any unsupported enamel. Look at the comparison of the mandibular first and second premolars. Note the differences in the size of the pulp chambers, lingual cusp, and the direction of the pulpal wall. So in your mandibular first premolar, don't forget that it should be slightly tilted. So if you follow the 1.5 millimeter from the cava surface margin, it will slope by itself. Okay. So you should have your periodontal probe, a good quality periodontal probe, for you to measure your cavity accurately. Here is the mandibular first premolar with sound transverse ridge. Okay, look at that. Eggshell wall follows the contour of your proximal surface. And then proximal box is converging towards the occlusal, but slightly diverging towards the proximal. So naka-open. This one is open. So you can see this line angle and this line angle. Axiolingual and axiofacial line angle, because your proximal box is diverging towards the proximal, but converging towards the occlusal. Next, this is the ideal distofacial extension if you have MOD caries. And the second one is when the entire distal cusp is included. So when you have class 2 caries, sometimes the patient doesn't realize that there is already caries until he feels pain or sensitivity. And then when you try to do the cavity preparation, it's already very large inside. Capping of distal cusp is indicated when occlusal margin crosses cuspal eminence. Distal cusp shown before reduction for capping, and distal cusp after reduction. 2 millimeter reduction is necessary to provide for minimal for the thickness of the amalgam. Okay, amalgam is stronger when you place it in bulk. Amalgam is moisture tolerant compared to your composite resin, which is moisture sensitive. Again, amalgam is stronger when you place it in bulk, and it is moisture tolerant. Let's look at the maxillary first premolar. Amalgam restoration. And this is an MOD, mesial-occlusodistal preparation on mandibular second premolar. Another example is the 3 and 4 surface restorations for maxillary first molars. So here, you have an MOD cavity, an MOD restoration. You have MOD L, including the lingual groove. And then this includes the entire cusp area. So this is also MODL, but including the restoration of the distolingual cusp. Maxillary molar involving reduction of distolingual cusp. Restoration outline for rotated teeth. So, remember, in our previous videos, before you start your class 2 preparation, you have to look at the anatomy, And second, you have to look for the contact area because your preparation should be 0.5 millimeters away from the contact area, buccally, lingually, and gingivally. So pag rotated ito, in this case, this is rotated, this is already buccal wall, this is your lingual wall. But same principle exists that we should not place the margins of your preparation in caries susceptible area. A good example is your contact area. If in case there is no caries on the occlusal part, you can also make a slot preparation. So instead of doing the access from the occlusal part, going to the proximal, or going to the area where the contact area is, then you just make a slot from the buccal going to the lingual. So you can restore the tooth. General characteristics of Class 2 amalgam proximal preparation. Gingival floor is horizontal when viewed from the proximal, not viewed from the buccal. Buccal and lingual walls are diverging towards the proximal surface. Buccal and lingual walls are diverging towards the proximal surface. Gingival margin should be extended 0.5 millimeter below the contact area. Gingival floor has a width of 1 millimeter mesiodistally for premolars and 1.2 to 1.5 millimeters for molars. Mesiodistal width of gingival floor. An axial wall is not vertical when viewed from the occlusal, but convergent occlusally by 2 to 3 degrees. So when you talk about convergent occlusally, is your axial wall like this, letter A? Is your axial wall like this, letter B? Or is your axial wall like this, letter C? Comment down your answers. Again, convergent occlusally by 2 to 3 degrees. Axial wall. An ixtopulpaline angle is beveled, which is your resistance form using gingival margin trimmer. And then the presence of S-curve, resistance form for you to achieve a 90-degree cava-surface angle on the buccal wall of the proximal box. And the S-curve can only be seen on the occlusal view of the preparation as a suggestion of a curve and should never be made exaggerated. It should not be an exaggerated S. And the retention groove is placed on the ixiobuccal and ixiolingual line angles using your 1/4 burr, which is your round burr. Small, round burr. So this concludes the lecture on Class 2 preparation. I hope you learned something today. Thank you for listening.